Good morning. I'm wondering how I got the gig, actually presenting with a PR guy. That's not great. We knocked up some slides while we were at lunch because as we were sitting here, we actually saw that people's faces were on these screens. I didn't wear makeup and Dan didn't shave. So, or was it that Dan didn't wear makeup and I didn't shave? I wasn't quite sure, so we decided the best thing to do was just to
take the focus away from
just work some slides, and hopefully you'll be looking at those and not looking at this. Dan and I are just going to spend about 10 minutes taking you through the newly formed Sports Advisory Group, a little bit of history, why it's set up, and to talk about the main focus that we have, and then we'll be taking your questions. So hopefully you'll have plenty of questions for us. And all of us here today know only too well that Wales is a really passionate sporting nation. But only 15 of us can represent Wales on the rugby field at any one time. 11 of us on a football field, 7 on a netball court, 4 in a relay. You know, sport has many, many rules. And although we're in sport, we don't have to be bound by those same rules. So, for instance, why can't Sport Wales harness the passion and expertise of specifically qualified and experienced people who really care about this sector? Those who, like me, haven't necessarily followed a career in sport, but have broad business experience that they can contribute. So with this in mind, the Sports Wales Advisory Group has been set up to help think about the future. With it, Sport Wales' target of getting 10% of the nation volunteering in sport has become one step closer to reality. Because our group, this lovely airbrushed set of photographs you see here, our group are all volunteers. Scores of professionals from many different sectors applied for roles in this 13-strong voluntary body. And the group is made up of people from the worlds of business, education, communications, social enterprise, and of course sport, with local authorities, national governing bodies, and of course Sport Wales represented. So really, as Seb Coe talked about this morning, reinforcing his message about trying to get everybody to utilise experience outside of the sports sector. Pick those people, be brave in the people that you pick.
So what are we actually going to do? Well, our remit, and it's a remit that many of you in the room will have, is to identify the long-term changes required to influence sports appeal amongst the less active. Okay, so maybe nothing new there, but what are we going to do that is new? We're going to aim to be innovative in our work. And as Helen said, that we've got a really diverse group of people on the advisory group with different experience. We want to try and use that experience to bring it to sport. Maybe something slightly different there, and something that Seb mentioned earlier. We're going to be asking difficult questions. We're going to be challenging. We're going to perhaps pose the unthinkable in some of the things that we suggest that Sport Wales does and Sport Wales asks the sector to do. And it's about really giving a wider voice to a wider range of people in sport, and not just kind of jobs for the boys or jobs for the girls, bringing in people from outside sport. So we're going to be supporting the Sport Wales board by looking at what's going to happen in the future, not just thinking of 3 years, 5 years, looking really ahead to the future and looking at how life's going to change and how the world's going to change, and identifying the headwinds and the tailwinds and the big megatrends that are really going to kind of impact not on just the board's work tomorrow, but in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time. The world around us is changing at a really, really rapid pace. And rightly so, Sport Wales has realised that the long-term planning and preparing of policy and development at a national level, a regional level, a local level, might need to respond at a rapid pace too.
And the whistle's only just blown, but our progress, we feel, has already been fairly swift. Like Laura talked earlier, she said that she didn't want this conference to be a talking shop. That's our aim for our group. We want it to be an action and an outcome orientated group. And really from a standing start in February, we're already underway with our work to provide a whole range of recommendations back to Sport Wales. And we've already considered a whole plethora of topics. And the group has decided to focus on 2 key areas over the first 12 months of its work. And it's really been a challenge to decide upon the key areas of focus, as there are many topics where we feel that value can and needs to be added. But ultimately, we accept that for us to be most effective, we have to first focus on the two areas where we feel we could have the biggest impact on sports and societies tomorrow. So let's hear from Dan about the first priority.
So yeah, we're all here today for Sport Wales' annual conference, and I'm sure we've all had a really interesting and useful day. But if we just fast forward a little bit, 13 years precisely to 2026, and this room we're in here today could be being used for athletes, delegates, the world's media, as Cardiff potentially hosts the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Why shouldn't we go for it? We've got a really great track record of delivering these huge sporting events to worldwide acclaim. You've only got to look at the FA Cup finals we've had, the Rugby World Cup, the Ashes, the lovely rain we had for that amazing Ryder Cup 2 years ago. We talked a lot today about how Wales did really, really well in the medal tables at London. But Dr. Hussey also mentioned another league table that we're riding really high in is the obesity league table. And, that's something I think everyone's going to take away from this and as a real priority and a real challenge for everyone. The world has changed so much over the last 13 years. Who knows what's going to change over the next 13 years? And with these technological, social and economic factors that we don't really know at the moment, going to change the way we live our lives, how does that change the opportunities for people to get involved with sport and physical activity? So how can we ensure if we spend all of this money and put all this effort into bringing the games to our doorstep that our population isn't on the couch? Well, this is what we're going to do. We're working with experts who predict the future. We're not talking Mystic Meg types here. We're talking futurologists whose stock in trade it is to look at the trends that are going to characterise the coming decades. And in effect, we're asking them to work with us to look at what's going to happen in the future, to tell us how we're going to be living our lives in 15 years' time. The output we want from this is a white paper, which then goes into the Sport Wales board. And the Sport Wales board then can share that with the sports sector to give information to the sector on how they can take decisive action to respond in advance of future demands. Life's changing. We all know that at a rapid pace. And we think the sport needs to change too, to remain as relevant as it is in our lives at the moment. And this is about really the sports sector being proactive ahead of changes as opposed to being reactive.
And the second priority is focusing on people. With the scarcity of time and money becoming more prevalent, we heard from Laura and from the Minister for Culture and Sport earlier on, they used the word cut quite extensively. So with that scarcity of time and money, how can this sector ensure that its people are performing to 100%? And how can we make volunteering in sport attractive, worthwhile, and of value to both the individuals and to organisations? With this in mind, the group will look to provide recommendations on tools, tactics and measurements that are needed for Sport Wales to help develop high-performing organisations with its stakeholders and with its customer base, including its own workforce, national governing bodies, local authorities, key stakeholders and partners. But first, we'll be focusing on developing the framework of volunteering. We heard a lot from Seb and from Laura about the importance and the impact that good volunteers can make. So we think that this is probably a great place for us to start to give some recommendations. Today, the success of volunteering work is often measured by numbers, the amount of volunteers available to the sector. But why shouldn't it be measured by the quality of those people? Business measures the quality of its people. Could and should sport follow that suit? It's widely believed that the experience of the sports participants and their success is very often a direct reflection of the people, and they're mainly volunteers, that they come into contact with. And anecdotally, we know that tens of volunteers are being turned away every week from organisations who don't have the capacity or the framework to recruit them, or to signpost them to other opportunities where their skills and their passion could be deployed effectively. So as a group, we believe that our sector volunteers deserve the very best experience when they sign up to volunteer, and we need to make sure that that's what we're delivering. And therefore, we need a clear path of development to help these volunteers feel truly respected and valued. We feel that's essential. It should happen everywhere, and it should happen every day. And hand in hand with this, we need to support our sector bodies in developing their own skills and equipping them with the tools to assist in developing their own volunteers. We think this is a part that is very often missed.
So what can you expect? What can the sector expect from this volunteer group? As Helen said, it's early days. I think we first met back in late February, was that right? You'd expect the commitment to be there. That's a given, but not just the commitment, over and above that, the professional insight that the group has given so far has been really, really encouraging. We're making good progress on these two things that we think are really important now. We'll be working on these two priorities to deliver recommendations to the Sport Wales Board within the next 12 months. The group's together for a 2-year term initially, and we'll be looking to independently both advise and support the Sport Wales Board in their mission to ensure that sport fits into tomorrow's society in both a meaningful and, importantly, a measurable way, and can play an even more prominent role in helping to develop the Wales of tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you both very much indeed. We've got an opportunity now to have a quick chat, a brief chat about some of the main issues. And so the usual way, put your hand up if you want to ask a question, or text in your questions on the gadgets here first. Has anybody here got a question to start off with? Scanning the room for one.
We have
brave.
one.
Here we go. We have one. Okay. Take it away. If you would press the speaker button, and then when you're finished, switch it again.
You got me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm Karen Rothery. I work for British Universities and Colleges of Sport. I'd be interested to hear how you feel higher education can be involved and help the process that you just outlined.
I think that Laura spoke a lot this morning about the need to be able to get people and grip people at a very early age, so in primary school, and be able to take kids from an early stage and give them that passion to be able to play sport. I think that education as a whole has got a huge part to play, whether that be primary school, secondary school, or higher education. And I think it'll have an even bigger part to play as the years go on, because we'll need to be able to have vehicles that are receptacles for taking a growing majority of people who are involved in sport, being able to take those through. I think from a very personal point of view, I played a lot of sport as a kid. I wasn't what you'd call a sporty kid by any means, but I played an awful lot of sport, particularly some team sports. And it's something that I think there's a really strong link between the skills that you learn as a child in sport, and being able to take those both into our higher education and then into business. Because when I left school, I went straight into work at 16 because my parents couldn't afford for me, not to work. So I had to go and get a job, and all of those skills, the winning attitude that Laura talked about earlier, the team leadership, the team skills, I was able to take those to McDonald's when I started with McDonald's 29 years ago as a 16-year-old, sweeping floors and cooking burgers. I was able to take those and immediately transfer those into good practices to help me with my business career. So I think it's going to play an even more important part.
I think there's two things for me. It's been spoken a lot about today, and it's something that kind of at the forefront of everyone's minds, that the kind of the mid-teens is often where a lot of children actually stop playing sport. So I'd like to see the higher education sector going out into the communities in which it works, and trying to work with schools and FE colleges to try and put programs together to stop people stopping, if you know what I mean. And then the second part of our work that we spoke about is the people development. It's important that the programs are given to organisations and local authorities to be able to develop people internally. But it's clear that there'll be a big role for HE to play in that as well, working hopefully with the recommendations that get put towards the Sport Wales Board to maybe develop work-based learning courses, or even through to degree level courses.
Anybody else with a question for Helen and Dan? Don't see any hands going up. We've had one question here on text. How does your work complement what the Sport Wales board is doing? I'd like to answer that.
I'll take that, shall I? I think that the two groups are very different. I mean, the Sport Wales board has a very specific role. You know, it's the board of a public organisation. It's responsible for developing programmes that spend public money. So particularly at times where the C word, the cut word, is used more often, its point of governance comes under even greater scrutiny. So the need for the Sport Wales board to be able to have another body that is able to help scan the horizon. I think it's a very smart initiative and very innovative of the Sport Wales board to get a group of volunteers together who are very experienced, who have got a wide range and a diverse background, to be able to scan the horizon for them so that they can absolutely concentrate on their public role, whilst at the same time be set for the future, be able to have recommendations and pull in expertise. So it's a great way to utilise resources. They're very separate. We don't have decision-making powers. The board has all of that. You know, our role is really to scan the horizon, use our business experience, and try and see where we can make recommendations that will help the future of sport and make Wales an even prouder sporting nation.
And if people want to engage with the advisory group, how do they do that?
I think, you know, a word that's been spoken a lot about today, apart from cuts, is another C word, which is collaboration. You know, I think that was key. You know, Lord Coe was saying that was key to delivering the games. I think it's going to be key to you know, with scarcer resources of time and money in the future. I think collaboration across the sports sector is going to be key to making the sports sector as relevant and as powerful as it can be. I think taking a step back and looking at the advisory group being set up, it's quite a collaborative thing the Sport Wales have done there. They've you know, made a collaboration of people from different walks of life and with different experiences. And I think from our point of view, you know, Helen and I are both open people. We're happy to pick up the phone. We're happy to meet with NGBs, LAs, stakeholders, and that process has already begun. From a more formal kind of setting for that, the group actually meets every month, and I think there are plans to have a part of that meeting given over to stakeholders from the sector coming in to, you know, put their case across to the group, talk about the real burning issues they have, and maybe just get a bit of outside perspective from the people on the group to try and help them, you know, with the issues and the obstacles they may be facing, but also to make them aware of some of the opportunities that this technology we talked about and the changes in society can have for the sector.
You talk about the sector, the sports sector. Rhian Connick has texted in a question. Do you see a role for community organisations not engaged in sport, and how will you engage them? So how will you look further afield?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was talked about earlier, but I think against a kind of a background of cuts, for me, Sport Wales and sport can really grow into lots of other areas. So health and education being two that Laura picked out earlier, and sport's such a kind of it kind of cuts across things and it enables things. So I think organisations who aren't related to sports, I mean, you could say, for example, Girl Guides and Scouts, they're not sports organisations, but they can be deliverers of sports in communities. I think, just kind of going back to the earlier point on collaboration, there's absolutely a place for organisations who don't necessarily have a sport remit or don't see themselves as sports organisations. And it's only through engaging with partners like that that we're actually going to get down those obesity leagues and we're actually going to get people physically active.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the floor? Do I see any hands going up? No, I don't. Well, we've got one other question here. Carl Daniels, when successful collaboration occurs, how will that be communicated to act as a catalyst for future collaboration? Who wants to tackle that one?
I think that one of the things that my experience in business has shown is that you always recognise and celebrate and communicate success, So I think it's really important that everybody understands what success looks like. So I think it will be something that when there are success stories to be told, that those success stories are very heavily publicised and being able to be shared with the Sport Wales team, shared with the partners, and for people to be able to then, some of the ideas that we have is to be able to create tools that be able to that show and share that best practice. That is definitely something that is on our agenda, to be able to clearly demonstrate what success looks like and be able to put people in touch with each other so that that success can breed further success.
Helen and Dan, thank you very much. Would you please show your appreciation? Thank you very much.